We're so happy to have this panel of true experts with us today to talk with you about some of the incredible solutions that they have driven in 2020. And this event is meant to be a companion piece to the slides from the annual report that you just saw. We've just put this together. It's hitting mailboxes this week and next. And it was really important for us at the Community Foundation to take a moment. There was so much energy towards the end of the year about good riddance 2020. You know, we can't wait to see you go 2020. Welcome 2021. And that's true. And the pain and the suffering of 2020 is real. But something else is real too. And the team at the Community Foundation really feels like it's our honor and our duty to share those stories with you as well. That in 2020, we had the remarkable vantage point to see this community come together really like never before. Whether it was to provide rent to farm workers or internet to students or healing for the land or support for fire survivors, so many things happened that were about the good in all of us. And we just felt like it was important to note that. We understand the good riddance to 2020 emotion, but we wanted to share another emotion that we've really felt all year as well. And so this event is really trying to lift up the stories of the remarkable trust that we've seen in the community, the generosity, the solutions, the opportunities we're trying to give to repair and remedy generations of inequity, and a real belief in each other. So thank you for being a part of that. For every donor that's with us today, none of this would have been possible if donors wouldn't have come together. For everybody who gave of their time, none of this would have been possible without you. For giving of your expertise, your knowledge, in some cases, wisdom that's been passed down for centuries. All of that was needed to get us through 2020. And so we're really excited to share these stories with you today. We will have time for questions at the end, and we really appreciate that people, when they registered, also gave us questions. So we've tried to compile and prepare our speakers for some of the most frequently asked questions so that we can try to make sure that you leave this session knowing a little bit more about what you hope to learn. We're going to do this in a format where we will share videos that have multiple speakers. Those speakers are also with us today. So you'll see the video, we'll have a little bit of interaction, then you'll see the next video. And at the end, we will have time for those questions and answers with the speakers. So in this first video, you're going to learn a little bit more about COVID testing, tracing, outreach, and messaging, and everything that was done this year in that regard. In the video, our interviewees are Isabel Bjork. She's the executive director of the Genomics Institute at UC Santa Cruz. I can't say enough good things about all the people on this call that we interviewed. My heart is so filled, but I just feel like Isabel was just one of the people that I was able to call, and we were just able to get things done just through trust and love and belief that we could do something. We did it. Dr. Amy McEntee from Salud para la Gente, she's the chief medical officer there. She has been, to say on the front lines is an understatement. She has led the effort to make sure that there is health access for people in South County. Jacob Martinez and Valentina Velasquez from Digital Nest are here to talk about their efforts to make sure that messages about COVID came from and to people who needed it the most in a way that was absolutely understandable and could hit home. And Dr. Marm Kilpatrick became my instant friend sometime in late March or early April in our efforts to make sure that testing was available and that we could move forward to help keep this community safe. So I'm just so grateful to all of you. And I've learned so much from each of you this year, and I'm excited to share this video. So let's take it away.
Early on in the pandemic, we were very limited on testing. There was a nationwide shortage of swabs and testing supplies. There would be days that we would have only 3 swabs left. The labs were too slow and we weren't getting test results back for 10 to 12 days, and that's not helpful for limiting the spread of disease.
Conversations about starting the lab probably date back to the beginning of March, when we realized there was a crisis here that needed to be addressed. We were reading the national news, the international news about the lack of testing. We all cared very much about our community. And there's some brilliant scientists on campus who we knew were able to create the test. What is truly extraordinary is that we started talking to partners in the community that provided health care for vulnerable populations.
When the schools closed in March, people immediately began losing their jobs. The shelter-in-place order sent many people to receive food at the Second Harvest food distribution. I remember looking at the lines down Beach Street of cars lined up to get groceries and thinking we must do everything we can to increase testing, contact tracing, and to provide a wage replacement for those who were not able to work due to COVID.
It was critical to us that the test we produced was highly accurate, that we delivered on time. Part of our strongest desire was that we return test results in 24 to 48 hours. And that's what we've managed to do.
It's been really amazing how all of the partnerships in Santa Cruz County has made our response to COVID in the county much better. The partnerships between public health, UC Santa Cruz, the community health centers, as well as all of the medical providers in the county, all of these types of things have really made our response possible in the county. And it's hard to imagine how a community could deal with COVID without having all those partnerships.
We had this group that was very supportive of providing testing to vulnerable populations or populations that really couldn't access the test easily. And we had a network for the safety net clinics. And then the Community Foundation played a role not only in supporting our testing, but also in bringing all these groups together and assessing where the needs are.
So I study infectious diseases, and specifically for COVID-19, I've been working on trying to understand both how the virus is spread and also what we can do to stop it. So the virus spreads primarily through kind of sustained close contact between people without masks, and especially in indoor spaces. The virus spreads most easily within households, but also can spread within a car, two people traveling together in a car. Obviously, if we have a social gathering inside someone's house, it can also even be spread outdoors if people are close together without masks.
COVID has really disproportionately affected Watsonville and Latinx residents of Santa Cruz County. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Primary one being that a lot of the Latinx community, as well as the community in Watsonville, are essential workers in Santa Cruz County. They don't have jobs where they can work from home, so they're exposed to the public more. Unfortunately, a lot of these essential jobs are low-paying jobs, and we live in a county that's a really high cost of living. So that ends up resulting in crowded housing situations. You have a perfect setup for more spread.
There's a lot of reasons why this part of the community has been impacted more than others. One is the lack of communication in their native language that's come into them, right? The lack of access to a lot of the information. A lot of the information out there is digital, and we're working with a community that really struggles to, one, have the economic resources to get the tools to tap into that digital world. They're essential workers. They need to go out there and they need to work in the fields. They need to go out in the restaurants. They need to go out and work in hotels. They don't have that luxury of tapping into economic reserves. Their work requires them to be out into the community, so which is just going to increase their possibility of being exposed to COVID.
I joined the Recovery Council to try to help provide the latest science for the local businesses, really to do what we can to keep people safe. And I think one of the challenges for the businesses and the public in general has been that there's just this barrage of information being reported by the press every day. The real focus that I've tried to provide to the ERC and the businesses is really just these core principles: giving people space, requiring people to have masks, and then trying to set up systems that enable people to be able to make themselves safe and the people around them safe.
We've been doing a lot of work to get more education out to the community about how to best protect yourself, how to get access to services if you do need testing. And we've done that through the Pajaro Valley Save Lives communication group.
How do we spread information out to the community around how to come together safely, or not to come together at all? So that's really what a lot of the communication effort was. We're hitting the Spanish-speaking community, Mixteco. We're talking about radio. We're talking about TV. We're talking about social media.
The NESCOR started because of COVID. The public health team works with volunteers and the Save the Lives Matter group in creating graphics that offer alternatives on how to celebrate. They also came with pamphlets that said, like, in Spanish and English on, like, okay, where can you go virtually to celebrate or to see different things that were going on in the community, such as the Watsonville Film Festival.
The things that worry me the most are that the current situation is really, really tough. We have a huge amount of the virus spreading in our community right now, and people are getting sick at a very high rate. Our hospitals are kind of maxed out. Our desire to be social as a kind of a species sometimes outweighs our knowledge and our kind of decision-making to be safe. And especially for some people that don't have maybe economic means, we don't have ways to have those social interactions in a safe way. So the combination of, I think, a lack of resources for some people, plus this kind of real desire to gather and to kind of meet with friends and family, especially we don't live with, creates, unfortunately, dangerous and risky environments for spreading the virus.
The funding from the foundation has been critical. Pretty early on, there was not submit a proposal or come back to us in a month. We're going to, write up, the process for this. It was yes, and we can help. The work that you're doing at the Digital Nest, the work that the youth are doing is critical to our safety and our health of our community.
The most important thing is how people have come together during this crisis and how there is the expertise that people bring for sure, but there is also this strong desire to work together here in Santa Cruz. And I am deeply impressed by the way the leadership of all of these organizations has supported working towards what really is pretty extraordinary, fast movement to come to solutions. And it's never been perfect, and there have been lots of bumps along the way, and everybody has managed to work through those very quickly to the common good.
The hopeful part to me is that most of us, not all of us, but most of us have the power to keep ourselves and our family and friends safe by basically choosing certain kinds of safer behaviors, and then these 2 vaccines finally know that they're actually quite effective and they're finally being rolled out and given to people. Those will really provide a light at the end of the tunnel from this pandemic.
Thank you. If you just take a moment and write in the chat some words that come to mind for you and thinking about the efforts for COVID testing, tracing, and education. We just appreciate what your reflections are on that video. So just go ahead and write a few things in the chat, a few words would be great. In addition to the testing, tracing, and messaging work, we've also, of course, supported direct economic assistance, and that need continues. We're still supporting families with about $500,000 a month of assistance through trusted partners like Community Bridges, Catholic Charities, Community Action Board, and others. We're really honored to partner with those organizations that have staff that have been trusted for a very long time in communities that so much need help now. So some of you asked for ways to help. We are very concerned as the continued regional shelter-in-place order stays in effect about the loss of wages and the loss of shifts. So, please continue to help your neighbors in whatever way possible. I know some people who are giving their CARES Act check to people that they know are undocumented who won't benefit. Certainly any of the organizations that we've been giving to could continue to use help, as well as the COVID fund. So that is the COVID testing and tracing video. A lot of you have asked us about the digital divide, and there's been so much in the national news, in California news, and many of you have wondered what's happening locally to make sure children have access to internet so they can learn. Of course, that comes with a lot of concerns over many years about disproportionate outcomes for children in our school systems. And closing the digital divide is one way that we felt we could act and act quickly. And I've just been so incredibly impressed with the people in the next video who just put their shoulders to this right away in March when the shelter-in-place order went into effect. We have Dr. Rodriguez, the superintendent of Pajaro Valley Unified School District, someone that I admire greatly for her focus on students and student outcomes. Peggy Dolgenos from Cruz.io, who I had the great fortune of meeting through this project. I felt I'd been circling her for years as a kind of amazing woman leader in town, but hadn't had the chance to work with her. And then you'll also hear from a family, Daniel and Isaiah Lopez. And I just want to share that Daniel, the father of the family, wrote to us yesterday and said how honored he was to get to contribute to this video and to be able to help. And I just think that's what this community has been all about. Any ways that any one of us could help, we've done. And so wanted to introduce those three interviewees. You'll hear more from them in a moment. But before we do, I'm going to just launch a poll. What percent of California students do not have access to the internet? Your choices are 9%, 18%, 21%, or 32%. Guesses are coming in. Okay, we'll close the poll now. And the correct answer is 21% of students do not have internet. And this group was incredibly accurate with the majority, 43% of you guessing that correctly. So 1 in 5 kids has not had access to the internet during this shutdown and during this pandemic. And you'll see here about the incredible local solutions to that issue. Thanks.
We always knew that having internet was an equity issue, but really with distance learning, it intensified that. So it went from, if students do not have access to internet, then they do not have access to learning.
I go to Freedom Elementary.
Oh, it's just something new we have to adapt to. First, we didn't have no internet. We were using our hotspot from our phone.
Like every time I talk to the teacher, like they can't hear me, and sometimes I can't hear them.
Equal Access Santa Cruz has the goal of getting everyone in Santa Cruz County, no matter where they live or what their economic situation is, reliable, fast internet. Internet is very important to modern life.
It is a partnership that we are doing not only with the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz, but also with Watsonville Rotary, Cruise.io, of course, and also Driscoll's. And so it's really a group community effort to ensure that every single child has access to reliable internet throughout the county, but specifically here within PVUSD.
When the pandemic hit, we knew that the need was going to be even greater. We saw that the kids were home from school and they needed to do online learning. And you can't do online learning if you don't have internet.
Either he writes essays, or he does a drawing, he takes a picture, puts it on the Chromebook, and he uses it for a lot of things.
We started working with the Pajaro Valley Unified School District. We started setting families up with internet connections to their homes. But we were really worried about it because the need is very great and we can only go so far and do so much. And then we talked to the Community Foundation and they suggested that we set up a fund where people could help. So now we're able to accept donations through the Community Foundation to keep our project going and to set up more kids with the internet that they need. It's telecommunications infrastructure, which means that we have to go under the ground or we have to set up equipment on top of buildings. So the expense of infrastructure is very great.
The largest cadre of students that is helped is our students that is at the Buena Vista Labor Camp. So we have 150 students and families.
There are migrant labor camps that we're working with that are very far out, and nothing's been built to them.
We have a middle schooler, her name is Maya, and her parent used to have to drive pretty significant miles to come to the school and then have to drive back. It required the mom not to be able to work because she had to be able to be there with the child. And that child was one of the homes that we were able to put internet in. And now she learned from home. Her mom was able to go back to work, and Maya is doing really well.
Everybody needs internet.
It takes the whole community to be able to do something like closing the digital divide.
What we're doing is just kind of working around it, using the community as a whole to say, let's do the right thing. Let's build to the places in our neighborhoods where people need this. And we're lucky to have a community that cares and can make it work.
We appreciate it, and most importantly, we're changing the lives of our students by doing so. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to give a special shout out as well to Driscoll's and to Watsonville Rotary, who were part of the fundraising mite behind the Buena Vista project, and it would not have happened without their community leadership. So big thanks if you're a Watsonville Rotarian or part of Driscoll's for your work on that as well. And we know that students' needs go far beyond internet access. We hear more and more from Dr. Rodriguez and other educational leaders about the incredible emotional support needs happening right now, the anxiety that children are dealing with as their parents are out of work, the loneliness and isolation of time just behind the screens, the need for outdoor time. So this is really a time when your youth organizations that you care about could really use your help as well. If you have a way to volunteer, if you love youth organizations, you can see many of those on our website. But we really invite you to learn more. We've got a big year ahead of us in supporting our students in many ways. Many of you are concerned about fire recovery, and I think I talked to a Last Chance fire survivor last night, and she said the rain feels like a welcome drink of water, cold water, after a very, very long hot summer. And today's rain feels like that. It's a gentle one, and our hearts go out to all of you who are in burn areas where Tuesday to Thursday might seem a little bit scary with the storms coming. So we want to talk to you about how the community has been supporting fire survivors, the very human needs of food and housing solutions, emotional support, mental health support. We also want to talk about what we're doing to heal the land, which became so distressed and weakened. And also we want to look backwards to Indigenous practices, backwards in time, I mean, so that we can understand Indigenous practices and how they really are the way forward in healing our land and preventing future destruction from these out of control fires. So we're really pleased to have our next panel with us. We have Hallie Green. Hallie is a fire survivor herself, but she is also the incredible, dedicated leader of the Boulder Creek Park and Rec District. We have Chairman Val Lopez and Sarah Reed from the Amamutsan Land Trust, and Lisa Lurie and Angie Grides from the Resource Conservation District. All have just stepped in with remarkable fortitude to get this community through the fire that we experienced. So let's just do another quick poll. How many fire impacted properties, remember there are about 900 in the county, how many fire impacted properties do you think the Resource Conservation District has visited and helped and made a plan for environmental support? This number will be through December. So the answers are still coming in, but we're almost there. All right, I think we'll end the poll. The correct answer, oh, sorry about that. The correct answer is indeed the 420. And we almost got there with the accurate response from the majority of you. The majority question, maybe you went for option C again because it was the correct one last time. But the most responses were 307, but indeed the RCD got to over 400 properties in just a few months. I mean, this group, it's just been amazing. Lisa called and said, we just need more help so that we can get out and talk to every property owner before the rains start. And they have made, every property owner just talks about how tangible, practical, realistic, supportive the help has been. So you're gonna learn more about that in this next video. Fire recovery is a long-term process, and we've really focused on 3 key areas. One is the needs of fire survivors, everything from mental health needs to housing, emergency support, and also the needs of the land. The land is weakened and distressed and needs to be cared for. And we're also looking towards the future in preventing future fires using restorative Indigenous practices to help our forests heal and survive upcoming fires.
After the fires, most people in Boulder Creek region were out of the area, 3 to 4 weeks at least before Boulder Creek was reopened. We're in that first few days of people coming back to Boulder Creek, but there really wasn't, in my opinion, much effort yet to connect with community members who had lost their homes. Part of it was just a kind of led realization that who is going to be that agency, trying to figure out what our role would be. And in being a community leader and community-led organization, I felt like this was on us. We had started with a 2-day event. We had a lot of support at that time as far as, different outreach for participants to, research what was available to them as far, victims. Right now we're concentrating mostly on having up-to-date information for people. We do have computers, printers available for people to utilize. We do still have the showers and stuff available for folks that are still, struggling with water. One thing I'm really hearing from a lot of people is just that second layer of just kind of devastation, coming back to the reality that this isn't going away. I don't just get to recover. It's going to be a new life. There's a lot of really great ideas and collaboration going on that's really unlike anything I've kind of seen before, so it's oddly connecting us all in this kind of difficult time. COVID pulled a lot of people apart, and then the fire brought us back together.
The Resource Conservation District stepped up early to help fire survivors make a plan for their land. There was an immediate need to work on erosion control, to protect the watersheds, make a plan for trees on property, and the RCD was there to help.
We're offering these site visits at no cost to landowners, and to date we've completed over 420 site assessments within the burn area. Sometimes working with individual landowners, but oftentimes working with entire neighborhoods or road associations. It's also been helpful in bringing people together and help foster that sense of community as we're recovering.
There were 2 major things that folks were concerned about when we went out to visit them on their properties. What is the process in rebuilding? And then they were worried about the natural resources on their properties. They were worried about the health of their trees. They were worried about water quality in the whole community from runoff that was going to be generated from burned structures on their property.
Really, it's going to take every one of us bringing our different expertise and resources to bear in looking more critically at how is the health and function of our forests and watersheds, and taking action where we can to get involved and improve those functions through things like reintroducing low intensity or good fire onto the landscape to help manage some of these fuel loads. And the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band have really been a leader in that effort.
The Amah Mutsun Land Trust is a nonprofit organization established by the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band to serve as a vehicle for restoring indigenous knowledge and indigenous stewardship to Mutsun and Awaswas lands. We're working in the areas of conservation and restoration, education, and indigenous stewardship. The Native Stewardship Corps is a work training and conservation program for Amah Mutsun Tribal Band members. They live in the Central Valley primarily, and through the Native Stewardship Corps, they are coming back to work on their ancestral lands and work to restore the practices of their ancestors. The Native Stewardship Corps was doing fuel reduction work the day that the fires hit, ironically, and they had to evacuate our program headquarters at Cascade Ranch, and the fires burned a lot of the buildings around Cascade Ranch. We lost a great deal of our tools. The Native stewards, they were out of work for 4 weeks.
We have so much to learn from the Amah Mutsun Land Trust. As we recover from this fire, we need to learn the indigenous practices that can keep our forests healthy into the future.
Well, California Indian people were burning the landscape regularly here in California, up and down the coast for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. There's been far less burning happening, and so the landscape is experiencing a fire deficit. These lands have evolved with regular controlled fire over thousands of years, and fire is needed on the landscape. The Amah Mutsun can help provide an example where stewardship through fire is necessary for keeping balance on these lands. Right now, the Native Stewards are working to do fire recovery with our partners and neighbors. The Native Stewards are removing burned vegetation. Partners here at Pie Ranch are looking to the Native Stewards and the Amamutsan Land Trust to help guide what is next on the land. What kind of values do we want to bring back to the land in our stewardship of these places? The Community Foundation of Santa Cruz stepped in with emergency funding that allowed us to solve our emergency housing problem.
The funding from the Community Foundation has been critical. It's supported doing these individual site visits, responding to landowners as they reached out to us for help.
As a fire survivor, I've just been so encouraged by all the different agencies, the outreach, and just the collaboration going on behind the scenes.
The connection of our community to our natural resources that I think is so moving in this situation where people have been faced with such great personal loss and yet are truly concerned and committed to addressing the impacts to the natural environment. And we're so grateful to just be a part of that process.
Thank you. I hope you can appreciate how much I feel that we've learned post-fire. I grew up as a kid, watching everything from Smokey the Bear, that all fire is bad, and to hear about thousands and thousands of years of stewarding this land in an alliance with fire is just such a different way to think of it than how so many of us were raised. Anyway, thank you so much to those interviews. I really value the work you're doing, and there's still such a long road ahead to help the land and the people to heal. Some of the questions that have come to us in 2020, the most frequent questions have been around how farm workers are doing. We heard so much early in the pandemic about shutdown of meatpacking plants and disruptions to our food systems, which are often have not been friendly to farm workers or meeting their needs. And many of you have asked how you could help farm workers. And we wanted to take some special time. We've talked a little bit in our prior events about the needs of farm workers, but we wanted to go a little deeper today. And we asked Ana Ventura Fares, who's a long time leader in Watsonville with very close connections to farm worker communities. She's the leader of Catholic Charities, to join us today, and also Dr. Ann Lopez. Dr. Ann, as we lovingly refer to her, leads the Center for Farm Worker Families. We spent a lot of time with both of these women in this year trying to make sure that we take down all the barriers needed to provide very easy to access rental assistance to keep people housed in this time. So thank you so much for being with us. We'll play the video now and come back for a little more explanation.
Farm workers and immigrants are very strong and resilient and very proud. One of the first stories of the pandemic was a man that was infected with COVID and had to finally, stay home. And when you live in poverty, everything is just a bigger obstacle. He didn't want to quit working because he was supporting his daughter that was about 10 that was going through chemo. They needed referrals for mental health. They, economic, we helped them with the rent. We gave them some food cards. It's not just about the rent and the food. It's a bigger picture of how families with all these obstacles are, still working.
In April 2020, our county's unemployment rate hit 17%. 23,000 people had lost their jobs in hospitality, in restaurants, and in house cleaning. Those people turned to the fields to find new ways to earn money, meaning that there were fewer and fewer shifts and wages available for the existing farm workers.
Our stated purpose is to make help the public become aware of the difficult lives that farm workers have. And beyond that, it's to improve their lives. I met her through the migrant camp, but through it all, she always comes through it. She always has a valiant spirit.
Yo soy una persona que trabaja en la agricultura, en la pizca de la fresa. Llegué aquí a California desde 1993. Tengo 4 hijos de familia. Soy madre soltera. Entonces decidí trabajar y sacar mis hijos. Yo adelante he trabajado en la mora, he trabajado en la blueberry, también en la pizca de la manzana, he limpiado casas. Aparte de eso que a veces le toca a uno en el field trabajar con calor, a veces con frío, como este año de los incendios, como parecía que fuera de noche. Este año no fue, pues bueno, para nosotros las personas que trabajamos en la agricultura, porque la verdad no hubo mucho trabajo, la fruta se perdió. Hemos pasado pues por crisis, se puede decir, no nada más yo, todo el mundo, ¿verdad? Pero pues gracias a Dios estamos luchando para seguir adelante.
One of the biggest challenges for them is that they live in very overcrowded housing where it could be like a family per room. So when the pandemic hit and they became ill, you know, it was easily spread. Many of them are undocumented. They don't have eligibility for unemployment. So they continue to work. So even if many of them had mild symptoms, they didn't go get tested, they needed to go to work.
What's happening here today is we're partnered with the Second Harvest Food Bank, and every month we provide food and household goods and clothing. Today we're going to have more education on COVID. Last month we got 400, and I think we easily have that many today. In the winter, no one has work and no one has money.
We are hearing that this winter is even more difficult. As the harvest season ended, there were no other jobs for farm workers to go to. People like Dr. Ann and Ruby and Anna and Ernestina have all helped us understand the importance of supporting farm workers this year.
I'm amazed. The whole community of Santa Cruz is coming out in force, which is part of what you're seeing today. The community response has been phenomenal.
We worked with like Ruby Vasquez of the Watsonville Farm Worker Appreciation events, where she goes out to the fields with a packet of information, not only about our services, but also information in Spanish on how to prevent COVID.
We're partnered with the wonderful folks at the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County, and they have provided us rental assistance for several months for farm workers who can't afford to pay rent.
Well, through the generosity, you know, of this community at the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County, we have helped, you know, at least 4 times as many people, helping them with rent. We have provided families with food cards. This is the time to, you know, think about our community and invest in the people that have been working so hard, you know, all the time that they've been here providing food and being proud of being part of the community. So we're very thankful to all the essential workers. And we're obviously the donors that have made us continue to do this very important work.
Thank you, Dr. Ann and Anna. I really appreciate you taking the time to do those interviews and taking the time and the expertise to get the resources that we've been able to raise and get them where it's needed most. We just so value that and appreciate you. And you know, as you heard in the interview, winter is going to be tough. And so to any of you who want to make sure that the people who feed us are fed in the coming months, help is still needed. The COVID fund is, as I said earlier, continuing to give about $500,000 a month of needed direct assistance. And of course, these organizations can also accept donations directly. You know, one of the things that we were thinking about is that farm workers so often don't know of our appreciation for all that they do. And we thought it would be helpful. Dr. Ann is doing a rent check distribution ceremony this weekend and a food distribution in 2 weeks. And we thought it would be nice to be able to take our words of appreciation and give Dr. Ann those words to give to farm workers in the coming weekends. And so if you would please just in the chat, write a few words of thanks or of appreciation, gratitude, whatever it is for you about the work that farm workers do for us all season long. Thanks. And while you're writing those words, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are lucky to have the interviewees, our collaborators here with us today. So if you have a question for the Amah Mutsun tribe, if you have a question about education, if you have a question about resource conservation, any of it, please feel free to write that in the chat. We have a few questions, as I said earlier, that came in with your registration. So we'll start with those. While I guess the chat right now we'll keep for the appreciations and for the farm workers. And then I'll just kick us off with some of the questions that you sent in to us earlier. So there were a lot of questions about the vaccine and how we can ensure vaccines are distributed equitably and quickly. We know about the disproportionate impacts to our Latinx community here in Santa Cruz County. And because we have Dr. Amy McEntee from Salud para la Gente, we thought we would give that question to Dr. McEntee first. And Jacob Martinez, if you want to chime in as well, that would be great. So go ahead, Dr. McEntee.
I would say that it's a complicated question in part because one of the biggest challenges with the vaccine is even if we have a great plan for how to distribute the vaccine to the Watsonville community, the farm working community, and the essential workers, if we don't have a vaccine supply, we won't be able to execute that plan. And what we're learning this week is that our supply is really not what we were expecting it to be. So we at Salud, we have started to vaccinate phase 1A. And one of the areas that we've been focusing on is in phase 1A are care workers, are caregivers. And there's, quite an informal network of people who are caregivers that might not work for an organization. And we know that with our patients and within the Watsonville community, a lot of people are caregivers, but they might not even recognize it because they're caring for elderly in their family, they're caring for sick people in their family. So we've really been making an effort to reach out to them and let them know that you are phase 1A and let's get you vaccinated. In terms of working towards equity, one of the things that's been really challenging is the vaccines come from 4 different sources. They go to multi-county entities, the pharmacy program that goes to the nursing home, and then through CalVax and through the public health. At community health centers right now, we're receiving our distribution of vaccines through public health, and we're working really closely with them. Another distribution goes to entities like Sutter and Kaiser, and they've been able to move on to phase 1B faster than public health and other entities. And that's really challenging because it's really obvious then when there's an inequity, even though that's not how the system was intended, it means that they're able to move on to their patients faster than we're able to. So we are working towards advocating to change that and advocating to get the vaccines into our community. One of the other things that we hear about in the state now that is a challenging thing is moving towards a tier system that focuses on age, where we'll be vaccinating 75 and older and 65 and older first, and that seems to be the direction it's going. That leaves out a lot of essential workers. That leaves out a lot of people in ag. And so that creates another inequity that that's probably not the intention. And really what this goes to is there's just not enough supply. Public health is working to bring a mass vaccine site to the fairgrounds so that what we need to make sure is that site really does end up targeting the community in Watsonville and that there's appropriate outreach to get people there.
Thank you, Dr. McEntee. And I think what I hear when I hear you say that is for those of us who can, as Marm said in his interview, those of us who can stay home and stay safe and make those choices, we should continue to hunker down and make sure that the vaccines are available for people who can't, who do need to do the kinds of essential work that puts them at risk. Jacob, did you want to add anything around vaccine distribution?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I can add to what was just shared, but there is a contingency of a lot of nonprofits through the Save Lives Pajaro Valley Community Group that are working with the County Health Department to have a unified front around information around COVID and as well as the vaccine. So just really proud of the community, of all these nonprofits coming together. We decided early on in days of COVID that we were going to work collaboratively and not compete for funding and not compete for resources or information, but instead let's have a unified front so we could make sure the message gets out to as many people in our community as possible. So we're just, the only thing I would add is just this group's here to work with the County Health Department and assist in any way that we can.
Thank you. And it's been such a confusing vaccine delivery system so far for everybody, let alone thinking about language or technology barriers. And so Jacob, the work of Save Lives Pajaro Valley is going to be so essential in making sure that people get clear, trustworthy information. So thank you for continuing to work on that. Another question that came in frequently, and I think I'll give this one to Chairman Val. What steps can be taken now to address future disasters?
Thank you for that question. And thank you to the Community Foundation of Santa Cruz County for all you do. And I want to thank everyone of the videos that we're seeing, just tremendous, life-saving, heartfelt work out there. And that's so good. And then finally to the people receiving that assistance, our prayers, our blessings are with you. And we stand strong together. So thank everyone. What can we, really, tribes look at things long term. We don't look at things 1 year from now, 2 years from now. We look at things, for future generations. So I'm going to give my response to that question is actually going to be with that in mind of looking at future generations. The way our people would traditionally use fires, they would burn every 5 to 7 years, and that kept those tremendous fuel loads down. But whenever you have a fire at that frequency, those are low intensity fires. They do not get this, real hot. They don't sterilize the ground or start trees on fire. And so having that regular work is really important. But whenever you burn at that frequency, what happens also is that it's really good for the environment, because when you burn those grasslands, those seeds, our heat and fire are needed to help germinate those the grassland seeds, and so those come up, and so that helps take care of the birds and other seed-eating animals. That second year of growth, you start getting these shoots, and those are always the preferred and most nutritious foods for wildlife and the grazing animals. That third year growth, you get these plants that are very important for critters that are on the ground and stuff like that, so they're not so easy prey overhead. The way we burned, there was a balance in everything we did. Finally, I want to say that it's important that we restore native plants. The traditional native plants, they can develop root systems that are 15 to 20 feet deep. And that's just tremendous for helping us, helping them survive fire, helping them survive drought, helping them and they're also, it helps them with disease. It helps with disease also the way our people took care of plants, because all plants have a responsibility to a full community. The fungi, the birds, the four-legged, et cetera. So learning traditional ecological knowledge the way our ancestors did is one way that we need to restore balance to our world. I can go on and on for hours, but I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for that question, and thank you very much for this event and your support.
Oh, thank you. Lisa, did you want to add on to Chairman Val's response around preparing for the future?
Sure, and I mean, it's great words to follow there from Val, and I think, as he wisely stated, a lot of what we're doing now is really looking to the future and how do we as a community come together to understand the health of our forests and do planning and implementation to try and restore the balance and function within our forested ecosystems. So prescribed fire being one of those efforts. Other efforts underway to look at how do we create strategically placed shaded fuel breaks or other fuels management work to reduce that longer term threat of catastrophic wildfire and actually restore the balance within our forests. And then at the more individual or community level, there are things that we can be doing for those of us who live in that wildland in urban interface, so near forested areas or open spaces. Educate ourselves about how do we reduce the risk of wildfire to our properties and to our neighborhoods. There's a lot of information related to that on the RCD's website and also our partners at the Fire Safe Council, where you can learn more and we can support you in that work. And then working with your neighbors to create FireWise certified communities. Again, looking at longer term, how do we reduce that risk of fire? And then I'd say another important thing that we can be doing is really taking the lessons learned from this emergency response effort and really taking those lessons into the future, sharing them with our partners and elected officials at the local and the state level, so that we're even better prepared going forward in our responses.
Great, thank you, Lisa. We have some questions about youth. One is, I think, for Dr. Rodriguez to speak about the quality and of internet available to students still, like what the unmet need is. And Peggy, you may be able to speak to that countywide as well. How many students are still without internet and plans to move forward? And then another question about youth that, Jacob, I'll put this in your head while we hear the other responses, is just to say more about how youth are involved in this work on messaging and COVID safe practices. So Dr. Rodriguez, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we initially handed out 1,000 hotspots. We then went to 4,000 hotspots. We do have a section of students who did not, weren't able to access the T-Mobile hotspot. So we now have replaced those. That happened early December, late November with Verizon hotspot. So there's actually pockets also in Aptos and in Pájaro Las Lomas that T-Mobile does not work. So we exchange those. So we have told all of our families that every child has access to internet. If we cannot get them a hotspot, so we actually have extra hotspots later, but because they have no self-service, then they can go to a safe space. So we have about 300 students that are physically on campus at one of our 7 spaces. So for us, access is, for PVUSD, we believe is 100%. But going back to quality, that's why the Equal Access Santa Cruz is so important, right? So they are the brand new hotspots. They are 5G, but they are a hotspot, and a hotspot can never be the same quality as home wired internet. And so that's why we're moving in that direction. But all of our students should have access. We did do a survey recently with our students, and almost 100% of the students said that their Chromebook was a sufficient device in order to be able to support them. We did have 15% of our students that said that their hotspot gave them spotty support. And so those would be the students that we're trying to tackle first with getting them home internet.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Peggy, did you want to add on from the broader high-speed internet perspective?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing about internet need is that it's going to just keep going and keep going up. You know, you can imagine if you didn't have Wi-Fi in your house, that the work that you do, the way that you access resources, if you have children in the house, you know, whether or not they're able to participate fully in school is a huge issue. And the hotspots are a kind of a temporary Band-Aid. And what Cruzado has been working on is really the long-term solution, the long-term way to get people equal access to internet so that they can fully participate. And that is harder. You know, we struggle with absentee landlords because we're doing infrastructure building. But what we see is that when we can get people hooked up, it's as good. What we do is as good as any of our paying customers, full paying customers anywhere in the county. They're getting internet that's as good as a business in downtown Santa Cruz.
And we're very proud of that. And we know that that's going to last a long time and be a real change for the inequitable situation that we're facing.
Thanks, Peggy. And I just want to hats off to both of you and your teams. I think the shelter in place order and the school shutdown was maybe a few days in when Dr. Rodriguez's food and nutrition team had figured out a whole meal delivery plan for all of Pajaro Valley Unified School District students. Peggy and her team were on this right away, trying to understand and working with superintendents across the county about what they could do to help. These are teams of people that many of us will never meet, but really kept our families in the county whole during this period. So there's so much here that we haven't been able to discuss, but Dr. Rodriguez, please give our regards to all of those people who made sure people were fed, who pivoted and got hotspots, who interviewed families, who understood all sorts of different needs happening as shelter in place went into effect. Let's see, Jacob, your thoughts on youth participating in these solutions, where you're headed.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, this lack of access to youth existed before COVID. I mean, this is one of the reasons why we launched the Nest, and we're working with the school district and Cruise.io to kind of solve this before COVID. And we, with Cruise.io, we launched Wi-Fi in the plaza here, and this is well before COVID hit. So I just want to remind the group, when kids go back to school, this problem isn't solved. This problem is going to exist, and we can't forget that. And to regards to our response, or youth response, I actually want to introduce Valentina Velasquez, who's here. She was in the video. She was a college graduate. She moved back home during COVID, and she wanted to get involved in her community. She's since become an AmeriCorps with us and kind of leading our effort with youth engagement around COVID. So Valentina, would you like to share a little bit? Is she there? Hope she's there.
I didn't see her, which is why I asked you, but I think she's coming. I think she's on the phone, so Stacy's got her, I think.
Okay. I think she's muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, welcome.
All right, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is actually down today, so I'm calling in to this event. But yes, going off of what Jacob said, like you said, NestCorps started because of COVID, and it's youth working together to think of like practical solutions and community needs that have started up because of COVID here in Watsonville and the rest of Santa Cruz County. And one of the specific ones that we've been working with since the summer is the public health campaign that works with Save Lives Group and the other partnerships. And that project is led by one of our great leaders, Shayla, and they work with different volunteers, youth volunteers who range from the ages of 14 to 24, who are interested in trying to create access to information about COVID, whether it be about like the vaccine, the effects of COVID, or how to stay safe during holidays, thinking of different alternatives of celebrating traditional holidays that we usually celebrate in person. And currently right now, when we go into our spring programming, they're gonna start brainstorming ways to engage with youth, because we've seen a gap in that. And how do we get youth to kind of, like, we know that COVID's taking place, but how do we get across different ways to engage with each other virtually, also with like mental health. So they're thinking of different ways, and it's also pretty creative too, because it's coming from a youth perspective. So we're really hoping that that will help us out a lot. And it's also given great opportunities for high school students to still engage in community virtually. They've had opportunities to learn how to create graphic design skills. So while they're doing this, they're also gaining project lead skills and different things that they can take with them as they continue in their life.
Thank you. I know we're jumping in between topics quite a bit. We have another question that I'll ask Dr. Ann and Anna to address, and it's with so much need, how do you select the families that receive assistance, and how much unmet need do you imagine that there is?
I know Dr. Ann's there, but Anna, I see your chair, but I don't know if you're there, but I could go while you're.
That's perfect, Anna, thank you.
Okay, yes, well, you know, the need has, I mean, it's like tenfold or more. So that, again, that makes it more difficult for us to be able to, obviously can't help everyone. And so we've always been here providing rent assistance for the last 35 years. And we have our process of, you know, intake and checking the contract and contacting the landlord if they'll accept the check from us. So we have all those processes already in place. So that was the good thing. And so it was just like all of you, just this expanded, incredible need, as you saw in the video. So it's, you know, kind of first come, first serve on the phone calls and going through who, you know, can get that paperwork in. And thankfully, you know, because of the donations, we were able to help 5 times as many more people, but we help 1 person out of 10 people that call. And we literally have people, you know, knocking on our windows, even though we're, you know, we can't have people inside. So to me, that's why the conversation changed in our South County Collaborative group and in other groups with government in a meeting with Assemblymember Rivas, is that this has to change the way we're doing wage replacement for people that have lost their jobs and are undocumented. Because, you know, if you look at stimulus checks going out to people that have jobs versus people that lost their jobs and have nothing to replace it with, absolutely nothing. And they have to call and hopefully get in line and, you know, provide all these documents and proofs, which is all fine, but there has to be a better way. And I know that in some other communities, for example, in LA, I think they received funding and they gave checks to everybody that worked in a restaurant and a hotel because they knew that those businesses are closed. So we can make it easier, you know. We don't have to make the poor struggle, you know, even, you know, 5 times more during the fact that they have nothing, you know, they have no money for food or rent. So, you know, we're doing what we can in this grassroots level, obviously, thanks to the donors, but as Catholic Charities, you know, and part of the national network of Catholic Charities USA and Catholic Charities California, we are advocating for that social justice, for that equal access for our government to think differently about how we can provide, you know, direct aid, direct aid for them so that they can have money to pay their rent and buy their food. Hopefully that answers a little bit of the question. But I needed to address that other part because, you know, we can't really, it's not sustainable and it's not really fair for them to carry that so much extra burden, even though they're the ones that lost their jobs completely.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks to your whole team. I think about your team and what they're doing and the heartache that they hear about and experience every day. And I just thank you so much for all of your love and care and effort. And Dr. Lopez, your group of farm worker leaders has developed a really interesting way to select who gets rental assistance and understand who needs it the most. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Who gets, let's see.
And thinking about your farm worker leaders and how they identify families most at risk of eviction or homelessness.
Oh, well, primarily by living in the community with them. And they hear the stories. Like we had one lady who had just had one of her legs removed because she had diabetes and they couldn't pay rent. So her husband came to get a rent check. Some of the stories are just heartbreaking. So that's what we hear, or they don't have food in the house. I mean, almost every farm worker I know is impacted negatively because the harvest last season was so poor. I mean, the fruit developed unevenly. So you had some that was mature, some that had barely started to mature, some that was rotten. And so they got paid, you know, 1/2 to 2/3 of the wages they normally get, which is always impoverished anyway. So if they're a farm worker, almost by definition, there's a need. And we really just take people, you know, we try to spread out the resources that were given from your wonderful community foundation as broadly as we can. And once somebody's gotten a check, the next month they don't get one because there's another line of people that are in need. And, you know, I have to say that as they line up to get their rent check, the despair on the faces just tell a whole story. I mean, it's really heart-wrenching. And one of our other, I'm just going to throw this in and we don't have to elaborate, but there's too much cancer in the children in the Watsonville farm worker community. Too much ADHD, autism, spectrum syndrome, and these are children of parents who do not have the resources to provide them with the care they need for special needs kids. And I really think that the issue of pesticides needs to be addressed because a lot of this is directly related to exposure, and there's more than enough science to show this. So I just want to throw that out. But as far as choosing farm workers, I haven't met any that don't have the need. We try to restrict it to 1 check per household. That's about our criteria.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Sue, can I just want to also add that something that we did for our farm workers is that because of the great need and because many of them don't live in traditional, you know, rental units with contracts and people are living in rooms, you know, thanks to the Community Foundation, you allowed us, you know, to provide us money to give people the rent in various forms or give them direct aid gift cards so that they can buy what they need or pay rent in different ways. Because we already know that the majority of farm workers that are low income do not live in these traditional contracts. And so that is a big obstacle for us when we have certain grants or the federal rental contracts that we'll receive. But when we get specific donations from people, we have that discretion. We still go through our process. And this time around, because the need was so great, we prioritized people that lost their jobs or adversely affected by COVID and had no other resource. Most of those were undocumented workers, but there were also other people. So it was that's how we chose the priority because people receiving unemployment also wanted rent assistance, but we prioritized people who were receiving nothing and had lost their job completely.
That's what we have.
And then we were able to give people food cards or debit cards so that they can pay in different ways or pay for food so that then they had some money to pay for rent. So that we were able to be a little creative that way. And we gave out with UndocuFund as well, was a major contributor. We gave out over $70,000 worth of gift cards throughout the Monterey and Santa Cruz County.
Yeah, your team's creativity and just focus on getting people the right support has been so moving in this period. And I'm torn because there are a bunch of questions. I'm going to just answer a couple of them because I think I can do it quickly. There was a question about internet access in Live Oak and Soquel, and I would say that is next on Cruise.io's list. So we have a list of new POPs that will be installed in 2021, and I think Live Oak is first up, but we can respond with more of the plan. But Peggy's team has a whole work plan set up for 2021 that will expand access further. Let's see, there's another question. Hallie, if you're still with us, there's just a question sort of generally about how you think fire survivors, of course, there's a broad spectrum, but how are fire survivors doing as they face winter and as temporary housing solutions are wearing thin, and what do you think is most needed now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been in that same concern. You know, our region up here, obviously we're, as you mentioned, getting ready to potentially evacuate this area early next week. Mm-hmm. Obviously that's been a bit of a concern and trigger for some people. As far as I can tell from our work, quite a few people are still living, you know, in trailers and are by no means in a position to probably rebuild or really relocate. A lot of the fire victims who were renters or were on kind of permanent structures in this region are definitely probably struggling the most. at this onset. And that's something similar to what we've been talking about. It's you know, socioeconomic issue in some ways for people not having the means necessarily to stay in this area. As far as homeowners, I think, you know, we are starting to see reports and information coming out on what areas are not going to be rebuildable. So there's certainly some concern for those folks who are not going to be able to rebuild due to soil reports or other information about their property. And then those that are, you know, we're still in the middle of phase 2 cleanup. And so there will be, you know, in this next phase, in my opinion, of kind of learning about what it takes to build in this county. The permit fees, you know, are a necessity to keep the county in operation. It is kind of a pet project of ours to start looking at maybe some potential grants for people that can't afford those permit costs. But yeah, I don't know if that was
it's a long and varied road ahead to help people get back on their feet. And I think, you know, there are a few comments in the chat. One, I think that Dr. Ann's comment around childhood cancer points to this web of services and support that's been built long before COVID. And I just want to, Lori Butterworth is with us. I just want to tip my hat to all the work that Jacob's Heart has done this year and for many years prior to make sure families are fed, that their emotional needs are taken care of, medical needs. So much work has happened in this county long before COVID and the fires to try to deal with huge gaps in services, big inequities, issues of race and income. And that work will continue long after COVID. But I think 2020 was a special year because everybody could feel it and see it in some way. And everyone on this call did something about it. And we didn't want to let 2020 go without recognizing that that's true, that everybody here did something to care and provide love and nourishment and support. And that work, just as it's happened before COVID, will need to continue long after. And we see our role at the Community Foundation as really bringing people together. And we see this group as a group to really invest in because you all are already so engaged. You already care so much. And so for the work ahead in 2021, we know it's not going to be easy. I think some people hoped we'd close the door in 2020 and 2021 would be this bright new day. Of course, that's not proving to be the case. And so you have many, many experts and solutionaires in your midst. And we all are just hats off to you. And we will continue to support you and come together as we can. One little group of talent that I want to make sure to mention is Inspira Studios. Watsonville homegrown film company has dedicated their talent to these videos, and we really want to thank them for making sure these stories got told. They are just such a talented team. So thank you so much, everyone. We're 2 minutes past our time. I apologize for that, but it's been so great to see some of your faces in these tiles, and I can't wait to have you back in this building in Aptos to come together in person. And I know it'll happen. And until then, you are certainly in my heart. So thank you so much.